Ekam aksharam hridhi nirantaram bhasati swayam likyate katham. हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमरसा स्वम् चिन्वता मज्जता पवनचलनरूपा आत्मनिष्ठो भवन्। देहं मृण्मयः जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न कस्यास्ति नाहं तत्तत भावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम्। सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयम्। Namo Rama. In this the Thursday Satsang from Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, the South Bangalore Center. As usual, we will be reading from Guru Vachka Koi. We will be reading 2 verses, and each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on the meaning, and that will be followed by a 10-minute practice of Atmacharana. After these 2 readings, meaning and the Atmacharana sessions are completed, there will be a summing up by our President, Dr. Shardaka, and that will be followed by an offering of Sri Ramanashtotram by Vaibhavji and Pratnam. We begin the Satsang by reading verse number 254. This is from the segment Investigation into Truth. The other 2 segments that follow this or meditation on the truth and the anubhava or experience of the truth. We are today reading from the sub-segment, the main segment being investigation. The sub-segment is the heart. And the verse is 254. The heart that shines, pervading within and without, exists on the right side of the chest and is experienced by jnanis through akandakara vritti, an unbroken experience. Only for the ignoramuses who have scorned understanding, I am the body, will the heart exist on the left side of the chest as a lump of flesh. There is a note from Talks, but I'll read the verse once again and then go to the note. The verse is, the heart that shines, pervading within and without, exists on the right side of the chest and is experienced by the jnanis through akanda akara vritti, an unbroken experience. Only for the ignoramuses who have the scorned understanding, I am the body, will the heart exist on the left side of the chest as a lump of flesh. The note from Talks is talk number 77. This brief paragraph has been selected. The Master Bhagavan, while referring to the Bible for be still and know that I am God, Psalm 46, found in Ecclesiastes, there is one alone and there is no second. And the wise man's heart is at the right hand, and a fool's heart is at the left. Talk 77. The Master Bhagavan, while referring to the Bible for from Bible
Your voice is breaking.
or whenever a Christian
We can't hear the last 4 sentences.
and seeks, okay. The Master, now it's clear?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Okay, thank you. The Master Bhagavan, while referring to the Bible for be still and know that I am God, Psalm 46. This is referred to by Bhagavan in many places in the talks, and probably they were addressed at the foreigners or Christians who would ask some doubts, and Bhagavan would say, see, this is there in the Bible, that be still, let the ego be still, and understand that that still awareness, the awareness which is achala, is a God. Know that the moving awareness, the moving consciousness is Jiva Bhava, and that Bhava which does not move is the Daivikaha. Be still and know that I am God. He found in Ecclesiastes, which is another part of the Bible, I think. No, the Psalm is found in Ecclesiastes. He also referred, there is one alone and there is no second, and the wise man's heart is at the right hand, and a fool's heart is at the left. And this clarification is also given to Sri Rama by Vasishta Muni in Yoga Vasishtam. In Yoga Vasishtam, which verse has been selected and translated by Bhagavan into Tamil from Yoga Vasishtam, it is a question by Sri Rama. What is the heart that you are referring to? Is it the one that pumps blood throughout the body? And Vasishta Muni says, no. It is that heart, which is the spiritual heart, which is beyond the inside and outside, which has no division as inside and outside, and which is the resource of all kalyana, of all fortunes. It is the bandara, it is the treasury of all fortunes. That is the spiritual heart, and not the physical heart, which will get which is mortal and which will perish, is the answer of Vasishta Muni. In this verse, Bhagavan gives a few more supports for us. The heart that shines, pervading within and without. Ganapati Muni says, Antaryascha Bahirvi Duta Timiram. For the ignorant one, both inside and outside is filled with ignorance, is filled with not knowing what that is truly. We construct something with the mind, but essentially the inside and the outside, Antaryascha Bahirvi Duta Timiram. It is filled with ignorance. But where is Bhagavan residing? Jyotirmayam Shashvatam. He has pervaded that ignorance with the light of knowledge. And he is Shashvatam. He is unmoving, unchanging, eternal. His Ganapati Muni is indication of who Bhagavan is. Antaryascha Bahirvi Dhuta Timiram Jyotirmaya Shashvatam Sthanam Prapya Virajate Vinamata Ajnana Munmulayam. He has crossed all ignorance and he is having a seat there. Pashyan Vishwapapeda Mulla Sadiyo Vishwasya Pare Para. Bhagavan's sight is fixed beyond all limitations and all ignorance called the words. Tasmai Shri Ramanaya Loka Guruve Shokashya Hamtre. That is Ramana. Ramana is the heart. Ramana is another name for the spiritual heart. Somehow, the spiritual heart, which is everything, which pervades the inside and the outside, and is experienced by the jnani as Akanda Akara Vritti. Akanda Akara Vritti is a support that comes through Vedanta. Now, the comparison or the reference is the I am the body identification is Kanda, is broken up. The consciousness which identifies is separate, the body is separate, and the act of identification is separate. The subject and the object and the act of identification, these are all broken up into three, or we can say subject and object division is condemned, the break is there. Whereas in Akanda Akara Vritti, that break is not there. That is why in Ulladhanarpada Bhagavan says, all the dualities and the triads vanish in the self. All the dualities, that subject and object, then the perceiver, perceive, and the act of perception. All these get merged into the self which is now shining as Akanda Akara Vritti. Akanda Akara Vritti, Bhagavan says, is I am body, I am Nandakumar, I am a father, I am a son. All these are broken up and triputis. Whereas this Purana that is experienced, is I. There, all the experiencer, the experienced world, and the light, the Ishvara, in which the experience takes place, is all only the Akhanda Akara. All the three are now shining as the Akhanda Akara. And where in the body is this experience? Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says, though the milk is present throughout the body of the cow, we, due to our limitation, can access it only through one place. Similarly, the God's presence is pervading the whole of the cosmos and throughout our body because the limitation of our identification with the physicality of things, we can begin to experience the Akhandakara in the right side of the chest. And by identifying with that, slowly the right side of the chest support will not be required because what is this Akhandakara Vritti? It is that heart which pervades inside completely and outside completely. It is experienced in the fulfillment of Atma-vichara as the Akhandakara Vritti, I. For Dhyanis, it is experienced as the Akhandakara Vritti of the Devam that they are meditating on. Then that becomes Akhandakara Vritti and the Japi is said to have merged into the Japa. For the Atma-vicharis, the Akhandakara Vritti, the I, which is the primary name of all gods, that shines as I. Only for the ignorances who have this scorned understanding, I am the body can refer to the gross, the subtle, or the causal. The gross can be with this, the subtle can be with any of the thoughts, and the causal can be by the identities we take or with the lack of knowledge, the ignorance we identify with, like saying, I don't know. Therefore, when we have that broken up identity, for such a one only, the heart, when we are asked what is the heart, we will show the physical heart. We will say, my heart had a bypass or a support or is functioning very well without trouble. So that refers to the physical heart. Whereas when Bhagavan refers to the heart, he refers to the Akhandakara Vritti, which is pervading everything inside, outside, and transcends, but is experienceable on the right side of the chest to begin with. So, as we practice Atma-vichara, we will understand that the source of the I thought which we are seeking is only the Akhandakara Vritti. When someone asks Bhagavan, what will I do when I lose my ego? How will the activity, the duty which I have to do go on? Bhagavan says, don't worry. The string of ego, if you cut, the string that connects everyone rises and shines. And the duties that are meant to be carried on will be carried on by that which was always carrying it on. And you will understand the truth of it, that it was never the ego which was the real doer, but that which connects everyone and that which can stand alone beyond that connection also. So with Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit for a 10-minute practice of Atma-vichara, where we seek the source of the I thought, which is having a break now and which is now following some other thought. Bhagavan says, when that thought arises, do not try to complete it, but instead ask, for whom has this thought arisen? Then that light which was pursuing the thought is now turned on itself by asking, this thought has arisen for me, who am I? Nanya. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit for 10 minutes practice of Atma-vichara. Vaibhavji, you will set the time for us?
Yes, sir. I'll do that, sir.
Shri Ramanaya. Now, we go on to the reading of the second verse. Revatima, you are having the verse number? Okay. This is from the segment Meditation on the Truth. The subsegment is Delusion. Verse number 552. Those insane people who lack the unitary knowledge of reality that exists and shines as one without duality will suffer. Those insane people who lack the unitary knowledge of reality that exists and shines as one without duality will suffer. Through their defective vision, which arises by virtue of their ignorance, they are deluded and perceive many differences. They are like people who see many mirage streams in a desert. Muruganar Swamigal gives a clarification for us. Those who have the dualistic view are bound to suffer in many ways through the triputis. But this is only the fault of the seer that sees and not of the seen. I'll read the verse again and the note. Those insane people who lack unitary knowledge of the reality that exists and shines as one without duality, they will suffer. Through their defective vision, which arises by virtue of their ignorance, they are deluded and perceive many differences. They are like people who see many mirage streams in a desert. Muruganar Swamigal, those who have the dualistic view are bound to suffer in many ways through the triputis. But this is only the fault of the seer that sees and not that of the seen. So once again, a major clue is given that it is the seer who is to be pursued. Who the seer is, the answer is never in the seen. There is no point in blaming parents, society, or the world. It is in the outlook. Drishtim Jnanamayim Krutva Pashyet Brahmamayim Jagat. If one corrects one's vision or who one is, then what appears as dualities and triputis will reveal itself in truth as the Ekam Aksharam. Now, the root cause of suffering is one of the enquiries that any spiritual work undertakes. The root cause of suffering, it is common knowledge to us that Buddha says, is due to desire, he says. The rising of desire is the root cause of suffering. Now, Bhagavan gives us the root as any fall from the realization of the unitary knowledge of that which exists and shines. Irundu olir, exists and shines self-luminously, independent of any other light. Irundu olir, in Ashtakam, Bhagavan says about Arunachala as Irundu olir. You are the one who exists and shines self-luminously. Irundu olir உனை விடுத்து அடுத்திடல் தெய்வம் விளக்கினை எடுத்து இருந்தொளி உனை விடு தடுத்திடல் தெய்வம் இருட்டினை விளக்கெடுத்தெடுத்திடலே காண். It is as though we are going to search for darkness holding light in hand. Bhagavan says that Arunachala is present as the existence consciousness which is shining self-luminously in each one of us. And living that unitary being which is our real nature, Arunachala is our very real nature. Neenaan arathuli nidangalimmayamai nindridum nilayarul Arunachala. May this duality that you, the Irundhulir, and me, the Jiva, are two different things. Let this falsity vanish by your grace and let us be one. Let the Irundhulir alone be the truth for me, asks Bhagavan of Arunachala. That is, Neenaan arathuli nidangalimmayama. That is the eternal happy state. Nindridum nilayam. Let me abide in that unitary existence consciousness. Bhagavan prays on behalf of all of us to Arunachala. Now, Irundhulir unai viduthu adukidal devam, iruttinai vilakkeduthu adukidale kaan, Irundhulir unai arivuruttidarkendre irundhanai madandorum vidavida uruvai. In all the religions or spiritual belief systems, you exist in different names. Only the existence consciousness is now existing as those names. That is why I said the Akhandakara Vritti is seen as the shining of the Nama by the one who has come through Japa. I think it is the ashram in Kanchangarh, the guru there, his name slips my mind. Now he comes to Bhagavan and he prays for grace from Bhagavan and he receives. What happens is he is a Ramanam Jati. He goes to a cave on the hill and meditates and he gets the flash that everything is Rama. Now if everything is Rama, he is also Rama. And at that point, that Rama will ask, who am I? Rama is my name, who am I? And finally the I will shine as I, says Bhagavan. In all sadhanas, the who am I will be the last question. In who am I sadhana, this is the only question that we ask, says Bhagavan. Irundhulir unai arivu uruttidarkendre irundhanai madandolum vidavida varuvai. Irundhulir unai arigalaril anno iraviyil arivaru kurudaveya. Those who don't know you as the no, not it is Ramdas ji, Kanchangarh Ramdas ji, who had that experience as everything is Rama. And the verse goes that Irundhulir unai arivuruttidarkendre irundhanai madandolum vidavida uruvai. Now, the next paragraph is also equally interesting. Manigalil saradana uyirthurum nana nadatharum oruvanai maruvine leeda. He says that like the thread that connects the beads in a necklace, you, the Irundhulir, the existence consciousness, is the one who ties all the jivas and all the beings and all the existence, the waking dream and deep sleep states, everything is tied and strung together by you. Because you are unitarily, all those are in Triputis. All those experiences of world is in Triputis. Seeing and seeing. Whereas the existence is so beyond because it is self-luminous. So the one which is helping us in sadhana, we have to identify with that, and that will reveal its nature as standalone, as the consumer of the Triputis. It stands beyond all the Triputis. The delusion vanishes in practice of Atma Vicharam. The delusion that there is Triputi and something I have to achieve and then I will get contentment vanishes here and now. When we ask, who am I? The Triputi dissolves, the duality dissolves, and the self alone is shining as existence consciousness. Jagat aham parah spurati me trayam, says Ganapati Muni. that Jagat, Aham, Paraha, the world, the Jiva, and the Ishvara all together are now shining as I, the Akhandakara Vritti. It is the simultaneous fulfillment of all desires. So, removal of sorrow, even according to Buddha, and removal of sorrow according to the Vedanta, because the Tripuri is sorrow, the duality is sorrow, Ekam is beyond the sorrow into the truth. Dvitiyam bhayam bhavati. That if there is a second thing apart from the existence consciousness, there is arising of fear. So Bhagavan gives us the Brahmastram to take beyond all sorrows. The root cause of sorrow is to think that there is two. And the removal of distress is to abide as the Ekam, the Arunachala who is shining in us as existence consciousness. And that is our real nature. Till that Akhandakara Vritti is realized to be our very nature, one should continue the practice of Atmacharam, the Brahmastram given to us by Bhagavan. With Bhagavan's grace, let us sit for Atmacharam for 10 minutes. Vaibhavji, you set the time for us.
Yes, sir, I'll set the time.
Namo Shri Ramana. Namo Ramana. I request our President, Dr. Sharda, to give us the summing up remarks.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the heart of all beings. By the immense grace of that self manifest as Ramana, we have been able to sit for self-inquiry for 20 minutes to cure what Bhagavan calls our insanity. And very rightly so, of course, because Bhagavan is very sweet. He calls himself also insane. He says that Paitiyam Patri Payanarum Yanakku Un Padamurum Arumarundarulvai. So he has referred to that madness. And there is another kind of, in a way, the great one, Sundaramurti Nayanar, addresses Shiva as a madman. He says Pitta. So there is a different madness. And from madness for the world, from madness for this entity, embodied entity, it has to shift to madness for the self. And then the madness will be cured, says Bhagavan. Pittavit tunai ner pittanakinai arul pittam teli marundarunachala. So the first step is to convert this insanity. If one has to be insane, if one has to be mad about something, it is better to be mad about the self. Because after all, what is madness? Madness is some kind of obsession. And we are obsessed with an entity, with an identity. And how to cure the madness? One is to counter it with another madness. That's why Bhagavan says, Pittu vittu unnai ner pittanakkinai. To become in love with Bhagavan, to think of Bhagavan all the time, or to think of the self all the time through self-inquiry, to become obsessed with self-inquiry. Nandakumar often says that when he was practicing self-inquiry, he would want to practice it night and day. To someone else, it might have appeared to be madness altogether. But that was the madness which had overcome him, which by grace had overcome him at that time. So at some time, Bhagavan would capture us also, but right now at least that much grace is there to make us recognize that this is madness. Normally, a person who is in the grip of madness doesn't realize that he or she is mad. The very recognition means that there is some amount of sanity. So Bhagavan has brought us to that point of sanity where we recognize, oh, to be thinking that one is this name and form is insanity. And I must come out of this situation somehow or the other. And Muruganar Swami, he says, what is the cure for this? He says there is this madness which takes us over of wanting to know the self, of wanting to be with Bhagavan, who is the self. But we are in halfway house, you see. Neither we are able to completely become crazy for this truth, nor are we able to disentangle ourselves from the craze for the world. And this too Bhagavan knows. He says, you have kept me neither good for the world nor good for the self. So Muruganar Swami says, then in that case, what is the answer? The answer is only to have more and more madness for the self, more and more madness for Ramana. He says in one of his poems, he says, Piramarindir perada pittutrale. It's like a mother is lamenting, "Oh, Ramana, I do not know what you have done to my daughter. She is now crazy about you. And she is neither fond of eating or sleeping or nothing. But then, what is the cure? You have the medicine for this. And what is that medicine? That medicine is more and more of the same madness. That's what Muruganar Swami says. More and pira marindir perada. This itself is the medicine for it. So more and more and more, as Bhagavan allows us to turn within to the self, gradually this actually the insanity, the sorrow of being in the world. See, the position of insanity is really one of sorrow, isn't it? A person, according to psychology, goes, goes over, as it were, goes across to the other side or over to that side of the normal curve out of some desperation. So, this insanity is a state of desperation. We are desperately seeking for bliss. But Bhagavan is sweetly saying, don't look in these mirages. It is here, the self is here. And the reassurance he is giving us is of the heart, the spiritual heart. Because we are caught in a frame of a body. So this is the reassurance Bhagavan gives us. A location of the spiritual heart within the body is given as a comfort for us. It makes us feel comfortable. Okay, it's here, it's right here. I can sort of sense it, I can understand. This is Bhagavan says it's in the right side, so I can understand. It gives me a feeling as if I can understand. And what happens when we actually try to look for the I, the source of the I, either it means am I, or even while asking who am I, while trying to see by focusing on the spiritual heart, Vishwanatha Swami told me, to begin with, it is a concept. Recognize that it's a concept I am giving you. It's a conceptual support. Do not imagine a heart space. Do not think of it like that. It is a conceptual support that is being given by Bhagavan. But when you turn within towards the heart source, which is at the right side, as mentioned by Bhagavan, automatically, he said, at some point of time, it will get into anubhava, it will get into the zone of experience. That's because when we actually turn within and ask, who am I? Or even if we are searching for the source, whence am I? As one goes deeper within, one forgets about everything else. One would forget about the body itself. One would forget about the boundaries. One would get absorbed by the I-ness within, by turning the light, as Nandakumar said, by turning the light back onto the I, gradually one gets absorbed by that. And then the boundaries are not there, then the location also would not be there. Where would the location be? There would be no location. There would only be the anubhava. So Bhagavan is giving us this support because we all say, as Bhagavan says, I, we say that. Whenever we say I, very naturally we feel this center as the center of our I feeling. And we very naturally feel this as the center of our love also, because when we love somebody or when we love something, even a small thing, we want to hold it to our bosom, right? We want to hold it here to our heart. So there is a very natural gravitation to that place of comfort and repose. And what is the self? Cure of insanity means it is a repose. The insanity is that constant burning, the bubbling of thoughts, the need to attain, the need to seek and get somewhere. Bhagavan says it's like being in the hot sun and then coming back to the shade. Why do you keep running into the sun and coming back to the shade? Enjoy this repose, says Bhagavan. This repose, to give us this repose, to give us this comfort, to give us the feeling that right here, it is very much available to us. Bhagavan gives us this support, and of course, he says, turn back to it with the question, who am I? Then that connects to its natural home. It will connect to its natural home. The I, either by seeking, as I said, the source, when we go, it connects to the natural home. Or if in who am I, if it is threatened with who am I, when its validity is threatened, when its identity is threatened, it will automatically rush back to its support. Whenever our identity is questioned, we like to go to our strongest point. Do you know whose daughter I am, what position I hold? Do you know there's something? Whichever is the strongest point, will immediately say that. So this I, when it is questioned, it gets back to its strength, says Bhagavan. It will fall back into its strength because its validity is being shaken. So it will automatically fall back into its source, which is ever waiting to embrace and envelop us in its abounding grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana, sir.
Namo Ramana Vedoji and Prashnama. You can start chanting.
Yes, sir. Namo Ramana. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योमि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि ॐ महासेन महोंशेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौळिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतच्छोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपःक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासुश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूणिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातीताय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजतचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उदीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलहृद्गोतस्कन्धाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेवितां त्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसार ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणादृशस्तुतित्रस्ते नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुदराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषक्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानो अरुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशा तादात्म्यभावं गतः वृन्निश्च स्वरवीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनासेकरात् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नमः लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. Sorry about the audio quality.
Namo Ramana, sir.